Cessair awoke with the taste of iron in his mouth, cold stone failing to cushion his pounding head. Lifting himself weary from the floor, his eyes met with a seemingly dead beast, surrounded by a pool of deep crimson. In his last fleeting memory, he was thrown from the platform by one of the many vile tentacles. As his vision faded, he was certain death was upon him, yet here he stood, battered and broken, but still alive. The beast showed no physical wounds, save for the few shallow cuts his pitiful dagger had managed to inflict. Before departing, Cessair scooped some of the beast's blood into a jar that had somehow survived the ordeal. He wasn't sure if it was necessary, but he did not endeavour to return to this wretched place. Cessair staggered through the citadel, hoping he'd reach home before his body gave out. As he passed through a familiar corridor, the corpse of the Wanderer was conspicuous in its absence, likely dragged away by mutants, he thought. As he left that terrible citadel, still heavily wounded, the beacon shone dimly in the sky, and Cessair began his journey home. Welcome back to Season 3 of Settlers. Today is Episode 6, and we'll be building the Healing Ward, a mysterious structure that has arisen in Cinis. The requirements are on screen now. This build is quite small and simple, though you will need a select few mods to achieve the final design. So without further ado, let's get started. Firstly, I started off with, of course, the base plate. I laid it out as shown in the blueprint, with the first tile at the entrance stepped down once before connecting to the stairs. The base plate uses Stormglass and Stormglass Cathedral ceilings, held up by pillars, with pillars at each exterior corner. Next, for the walls. I built up the corner pillars 2 tiles high and built the Stormglass walls 2 tiles high to match. I then used a Stormglass double door at the front of the build to form the entrance, and placed fences on either side of the door. I then used vaulted ceilings to create archways above each extended section inside, and I then chose to use middle, large Stormglass pillar pieces to add pseudo-doorways and restrict the space inside. Once they were placed, I then merged them into the roof above, using inverted corner vaulted ceilings. I then went above the build and built a 2x2 in the centre, with walls on the first tile and Stormglass Cathedral window tops on the second. Next, I used sloping sides to build roof gables on the extensions and placed crenellated walls atop the 2x2. Following that, I then used roof pieces on the extensions to create open gable roofs, and ramp corner pieces atop the 2x2 to create a pyramid roof. Finally, I used large Stormglass pillar middles and caps to add buttresses on the back and side extensions for architectural detail, finishing off the build. Barely reaching Cinis intact, Cessair was surprised to see a small building had arose in his absence. His body screamed in pain as he desperately sucked down air. Unsure of how much longer he could cling to life, he staggered inside. The building was horribly cramped, with low ceilings hanging uncomfortably just overhead. Therein lay a stone slab against the back wall, a similar slab on the left, and a strange purple rock on the right. Placing the jar of blood on the left slab, he spotted a strange mask laying in wait. Looking closer, it was a peculiar garment indeed, seemingly designed to deprive and block the wearer's eyes. Glancing across to the central slab, thereupon lay a scroll daubed by an unseen hand. Don the mask and lay thee down. Wiping a trickle of blood from his nose, Cessair didn't have time to ponder the message. Pushing the scroll aside, he sat on the slab before donning the mask and laying down, all the while muttering incantations of restoration. After what felt like hours beneath the mask, unsure if he was dead or alive, he began to see. A chasm of radiant darkness shining in incandescent horror. Through that chasm, something approached. A hand reached out of the abyss, softly holding Cessair's arm. He could hardly bear to look, wondering if it was the spectre of death bearing down upon him. Slow and sweet whispers began to dance across his skin, closing the cuts and stemming the bleeds. He could not understand the words, but as his pain began to ease, he came to know that death would not receive him today. Feeling the hand lift from his arm, Cessair turned cautiously towards the chasm. Impenetrable waves of festering darkness, broken by the figure of a woman. Draped in ornate vesture, her marked face obscured by a blinding cover across her eyes, standing amongst the abyss.
Arise.
With that, Cessair awoke again beneath the dim glow of the torches. Pulling the mask away, he was still alone in the room, his wounds seemingly healed. After all these years, the relentless searching, it was upon the cusp of death that she had finally came to him, the blinded goddess. Glancing across the strange building, something had changed. The crystal, previously glowing incandescently purple, had shifted ever so slightly, infused with a deeper, cosmic essence, golden flecks dancing through the air around the stone. Cessair left the building in a haze. A strange aura permeated the fog now blanketing the ground of Cinis. Something had altered things here, something of terrible, wicked power. Feeling himself pulled towards the light-drenched chapel, Cessair approached the doors in cold anticipation. Pushing the doors open, he laid his eyes upon what he had tried for so long to conjure. Where there was previously dust and ruin, now sat the altar, a shrine built on 1,000 cruelties. The chapel was entirely restored, flanked by those same cosmic crystals. The altar shone with magnificence, yet it was still not complete. Sat just before the altar laid an empty pedestal. This was surely where the completed sacrum stone must lie. Returning to the devoutment pit once more, vial of beast blood in hand, the sacrum stone lay at the bottom of the now empty pit. Engorged by the blood of sacrifice, the stone let off a strange luminescence, though, much like the altar, it was not quite complete. It thirsted for the beast. Holding the vial over the hole, Cessair thought back to the tentacled monster for a moment, before casting the blood down to the stone below. The blood grew immediately in volume, whipping around the pit, and finally filling the sacrum stone, a vile red light pouring forth from its radiant surface. Taking the stone carefully from the pit, Cessair journeyed back to the chapel. After so many years, the ritual had but one step remaining. Placing the stone into its pedestal, there was a moment of silence before the earth shuddered violently once more, the veil beginning to part.